All right, let's plunge headfirst into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
We're talking ancient philosophers, military
Oh,
masterminds,
yeah, I love this stuff.
even seductive courtesans and con artists,
This is my kind of reading list.
all showing us how power really works, the subtle stuff. And today, well, we're going to try to equip you, the listener, with this knowledge so you can navigate life with, well, a bit more awareness, maybe even a little strategic finesse.
Okay, I'm so ready for this,
The whole premise that Green puts forward is that human nature.
especially when it comes to power, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It stays remarkably consistent, even across centuries. The core, the way we go for power, stays the same.
So fascinating. So there's this one law, never outshine the master, that just stuck with me. It makes you think about all those times you've tried impressing someone.
Like a boss.
Yeah, a boss or a mentor, and it just backfires spectacularly.
Classic trap, yeah. And Green uses this story of Nicolas Fouquet to make the point. This guy throws this insane party, right, for King Louis XIV, hoping to win favor.
A lavish party.
Lavish, yeah. But the king just sees all this opulence, all that wealth, as a threat.
Like Fouquet's challenging the king's authority just by having nicer things.
That's exactly how Louis XIV took it.
And that party did not end well for Fouquet, right?
Nope. He ended up imprisoned for life.
Yikes. Talk about a party foul. So how do we avoid accidentally outshining the master in our own lives?
Well, it's not about completely hiding your talents. It's more about making those above you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like letting them take credit when it makes sense, praising them publicly, subtly stroking their ego a bit. It's often about perception.
So instead of stealing the show, we should be the master puppeteers working things behind the scenes. I like it. Okay, this next one. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. That sounds kind of messed up.
I know, it's counterintuitive, right?
It is.
But Green's argument is that friends, because they're close to you, they can get complacent, maybe even jealous of your success.
They could betray you without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Mm.
Enemies, on the other hand, they keep you on your toes.
It's like having a sparring partner who's always pushing you to be better.
Right. Green even uses the example of Mao Zedong.
During the Japanese invasion of China, right?
Yeah, he actually used that to solidify his own power base, turned a weakness into an opportunity.
So it's all about perspective, turning a perceived negative into a strategic advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Green really gets into the power of deception and smokescreens. This is where things start to feel like a spy novel.
Totally. He talks about con artists like Yellow Kid Weil,
I've heard of them.
mastered the unreadable poker face.
Like you can't tell what they're thinking at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for Green, deception's not always about outright lying. It's more about crafting an image, an illusion that hides your true motives.
Kind of like a magician, right?
Misdirection. That's a good way to put it. Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia is another good example.
What did he do?
He pretended to be weak, to be differential to his rivals.
While secretly planning to outmaneuver them.
Exactly. Makes you wonder how much of what we see in the world is just carefully crafted illusion.
Right. But is it all smoke and mirrors? Is there any room for genuine authenticity in the pursuit of power?
That's something Green wrestles with throughout the book. He says that your reputation, how you're perceived, that is a form of power in itself.
And P.C. Barnum was the king of that, right? The whole image-making thing.
Absolutely. He knew how to create and control his public image masterfully.
And then there's the flip side. A damaged reputation can be nearly impossible to recover from.
Totally agree. And Green uses the stories of Coriolanus, the Roman general, and Mitsusia, this Chinese courtier. Both were really talented, but their reputations got manipulated and it was their downfall.
Wow. So not only do you have to build a good reputation, you also got to protect it from attacks.
Exactly. And that's where Green brings up this concept of creating a star, like building your own brand, making yourself stand out and attract attention.
Like Thomas Edison, right? He was all about self-promotion. And Mata Hari, with her whole mysterious exotic dancer thing, it's about creating a narrative that people are drawn to.
Exactly. It's not just what you do, it's how you're seen doing it. It's all about storytelling and image making, shaping how people see you.
So image management is key in this power game. But how do we actually build those powerful alliances that Green talks about?
Let's look at Cesar Borgia. This guy was notorious, ambitious, and knew how to play people. He was always forming and breaking alliances as needed, like a high-stakes game of chess. but with real consequences.
The real-life Game of Thrones with all the backstabbing and intrigue. But how do we navigate those dangerous waters without getting lost?
That's where observation comes in. Greene tells this story of Joseph Duveen, this art dealer.
Okay, what did you do?
He wanted to win over Andrew Mellon, this super wealthy industrialist. So Duveen researched like crazy, figured out all of Mellon's tastes, even anticipated his desires before Mellon himself knew him.
Like a detective almost, gathering intel to build relationships.
Exactly. Information is power. The more you know about the people you're dealing with, the better you can influence them.
This is mind-blowing. So far we've got deception, image control, strategic alliances, and now the art of observation. But what about when you're in a weak spot? Does Greene have advice for turning the tables?
Yeah, that's where the power of surrender comes in. It sounds crazy, but sometimes the best move is to yield, to appear weak. Greene compares the Malians, who resisted Athens and got crushed, to King Goujian of Yu.
Who surrendered to his enemy and then came back to win years later, right?
Well, you got it. Goujian took the humiliation, bided his time, and eventually he got his revenge.
So it's all about picking your battles, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them. Timing seems really important here.
Absolutely crucial. Greene's all about timing and absence, using examples like Napoleon escaping from Elba and this guy Talleyrand, who just had a knack for knowing when things were about to shift. He even calls it the law of absence. Strategic withdrawal can actually boost your value.
It's like they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Right. If you're always around, people take you for granted. But make yourself scarce, and suddenly you're more desirable.
It's the same with like limited edition products or even in relationships.
Exactly. The less available you are, the more people want you.
Okay, so many ideas brewing. But what about when you need to make changes happen? How do you do that without things blowing up in your face?
That's where we get to this balance between making changes and respecting what's already there. Too much change, too fast, it creates chaos.
Makes sense. People don't like change forced on them.
Right. Greene uses Henry VIII breaking from the Catholic Church as an example. Huge change, tons of upheaval.
People need stability, familiarity.
Absolutely. So if change has to happen, it should be gradual, strategic, make it feel like an improvement on what came before, not a total rejection.
So you gotta meet people where they're at and guide them towards the new way of doing things.
Precisely. But even with good intentions, change often triggers some intense emotions, especially envy.
Oh yeah, that green-eyed monster.
Exactly. And Greene has a whole law about it. Avoid envy. He talks about Joe Orton, the playwright, and his lover Kenneth Halliwell. Halliwell was so envious of Orton's success that it led to a murder-suicide.
Wow, that's dark. A reminder of how destructive envy can be. It can really poison relationships and ruin success. But how do you avoid it?
Greene contrasts that story with Cosimo de' Medici. He was super wealthy but stayed low-key, avoided showing off. He knew that flaunting his power would just breed envy.
So you got to be aware of how your actions affect others. Balance confidence with humility.
Exactly. And strategic generosity can be really powerful here. Sharing your success, helping others, it can actually disarm rivals and build goodwill.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. Being generous creates a more positive environment. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there one law that sums up this formlessness that Greene's talking about?
Yes, the last one, Law 48. Assume formlessness. He compares it to the game Go. Not about conquering territory like in chess. It's about encircling your opponent, slowly constricting them. It's about being fluid, adaptable, unpredictable.
Like water, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Water flows around obstacles, finds the path of least resistance. Chess is rigid. Go is all about change. And you see this in military strategy, too.
Like Mao Zedong's guerrilla warfare or Rommel's tactics in North Africa.
Yep, both were masters of adapting to the situation, exploiting weaknesses.
So it's not about having one fixed plan. It's about being flexible and ready to evolve. This is blowing my mind.
That's the beauty of the 48 Laws of Power. It's a way of looking at the world, at how people interact.
And it feels so relevant even today. I already feel like I'm seeing things differently.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
It's so much more to explore.
Definitely.
Join us for the next 2 parts of this deep dive, where we'll uncover even more fascinating laws and examples from Robert Greene's masterpiece.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How those strategies, surrender, deception, can be so subtle, yet so powerful. Now let's look at this one, Law 30.
What's that one?
Make your accomplishments seem effortless. It's really about, well, creating that aura of superiority.
Ooh, I like that. It's like Watching someone pull off something incredibly difficult, but they make it look so easy, like they have the secret superpower or something.
Exactly. Think about Houdini. All those daring escapes, what really captivated audiences wasn't just the danger, it was how effortless he made it seem, like superhuman.
It's like watching a swan gliding across a lake, all graceful and elegant, but underneath, there's a lot of paddling going on. So how do we pull this off in real life? It's not about slacking off, is it?
No, no, it's about mastering your craft, your skill, to the point where it just looks easy to everyone else.
Like those leaders who make tough calls look simple, or artists whose work just seems to flow effortlessly.
Exactly. You got to hide the sweat, the struggle behind the achievement.
Don't let them see you sweat, right? Okay, I'm getting this. Now, what about this next law? Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. That sounds seriously strategic.
It is. It is. Greene says one of the most effective ways to wield power is by limiting the choices that other people have. Like you're framing the situation so they get nudged towards the decision you want.
But they think they're making the choice freely.
That's the key. It's subtle manipulation. Think about Cardinal Richelieu. He knew that King Louis XIII, the actual ruler, could be swayed by whoever controlled what information, what choices he saw.
So it's about understanding how people make decisions and using that to your advantage. It's like those "do you want fries with that" moments. They're not forcing you, but they're definitely leading you towards spending more money.
Exactly. And this applies to so many things, negotiations, marketing, even just daily conversations. If you get how people decide things, you can be way more persuasive.
It's kind of like mind control. Okay, but what about tapping into what people actually want, their motivations? Where does that fit in?
That's where Law 32 comes in. Play to people's fantasies. Greene argues that we as humans were suckers for stories, for narratives that offer escape, hope, a better life.
Like fairy tales and myths, even those reality TV shows.
Exactly. We all crave something beyond the everyday, something bigger than ourselves. And Greene uses the example of alchemists. They never actually turned lead into gold.
But they had power because they promised something people desperately wanted.
Exactly. Wealth, transformation. It's about understanding what drives people, what inspires them.
And then you can tap into that, use it to your advantage.
Right, but Greene cautions against just using logic and reason. Appealing to emotions, to those fantasies, that's where the real power lies.
Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? You got to connect with people on an emotional level if you want to truly persuade them.
Now, the next one's a bit more, well, direct. It's Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew.
Thumbscrew. Okay, that sounds a little intense. What's that about?
Basically, Greene's saying everyone has a weakness, a vulnerability you can exploit.
Ooh, I see. It could be a fear, a hidden desire, some insecurity that they don't want anyone to know about.
Exactly. Find that pressure point, and you have leverage over them.
But doesn't that get kind of ethically murky, like using someone's weakness against them?
Greene cautions against that, using this knowledge just for selfish gain. It's more about understanding people's motivations, knowing what makes them pick.
Okay, so it's like a superpower, but with great responsibility. Got it. Now I'm ready for a more positive spin on power. What about projecting confidence, authority?
Ah, yes. That's Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself, the image you project, it has a huge impact on how people see you.
Like Louis XIV, the Sun King, he was all about spectacle and grandeur.
Versailles was a statement of power, sophistication.
And it worked. People were totally impressed. So it's about owning your power, having confidence, setting high standards for yourself and everyone around you. But it can't just be an act, right?
No, it's got to be genuine. People can smell a fake a mile away. It's about cultivating that inner belief in yourself and letting it shine through. Combine that with a strong outward presence, and you become a force to be reckoned with.
So walk the walk, talk the talk. But even with all the confidence in the world, timing still matters, right?
Absolutely. Law 35, master the art of timing. Timing is everything, especially with power. Think about Napoleon's escape from Elba, perfectly timed, or Talleyrand, sensing when things were about to shift politically. It's like surfing. You got to catch the wave at the right moment.
But you can't control the waves.
Right. You can't force timing, but you can be prepared, anticipate, and then seize the opportunity when it comes.
Be present, read the room, sense the shifts in energy, like a power ninja. But what about when things don't go our way? How do we deal with setbacks, disappointments?
That's where Law 36 comes in. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. Don't dwell on what you can't control. It just eats away at you.
Like they say, don't cry over spilled milk.
Exactly. Sometimes the best revenge is moving on and focusing on what you can control.
Choose happiness and fulfillment over bitterness. Okay, so we've got timing, surrender, and now the art of letting go. What other tools does Green offer for mastering the game of power?
Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Spectacles, they have this power to influence and persuade, bypass logic, and go straight to the emotions.
Like those elaborate ceremonies the Egyptians and Romans had. Or even Louis XIV's big public displays. It wasn't just for fun, it was about showing power and authority.
Precisely. And you can apply this anywhere, whether you're leading a team, creating art, anything. Spectacles grab attention, they make a lasting impression.
Think outside the box, go beyond the ordinary, create something that captures people's imaginations. Now, this next law seems a bit contradictory, Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others.
Ah, yes. How to be true to yourself while also fitting in. It's a balancing act.
It is.
But Greene's not saying suppress your individuality. He's saying there's a strategic advantage to conforming, at least on the surface.
Don't rock the boat too much. Don't make yourself a target unnecessarily.
Right? Look at the Spartans. They were all about conformity, but it created this incredible internal cohesion and discipline.
Yeah.
It was part of what made them such powerful warriors.
So it's knowing when to blend in and when to stand out, adapt to the social situation.
Exactly. But sometimes you got to shake things up a bit.
What is the right time for that?
Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. Passivity rarely leads to success. Sometimes you need to create urgency, excitement, even a bit of chaos.
Disrupt the status quo, make opportunities where there weren't any before?
Exactly. Like the Athenian general Alcibiades. He was a master at stirring up trouble and then using that chaos to his advantage. But it's about being strategic, not just creating chaos for no reason.
Be a few steps ahead, thinking like a chess master. But with all this talk of power and strategy, we got to keep ethics in mind, right?
Absolutely. That's what makes Greene's work so thought-provoking. It's not just a how-to guide for manipulation, it's a way to understand these power dynamics and make conscious choices about how we want to operate in the world.
So we're not just learning how to play the game, we're deciding what kind of player we want to be.
Exactly.
Okay, let's keep going with these laws. What's next?
Law 40. Despise the free lunch.
Now wait a minute, who doesn't love a free lunch?
We all do. But Greene's saying there's always a hidden cost, a string attached, could be an obligation, a compromise of your values. There's always a price.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's always a catch.
Right. Think about the Roman emperors. They kept the masses happy with bread and circuses, but it was all about distracting them while their freedoms eroded.
So always look for the hidden agenda behind seemingly generous offers. Be discerning, ask questions. Don't be afraid to walk away from a deal that's too good to be true.
This next one's especially relevant for anyone following in the footsteps of someone who made a big impact.
Okay, I'm curious.
It's Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. It's super hard to succeed when you're constantly being compared to your predecessor, especially if they were really successful or charismatic.
Like trying to be the next Michael Jordan or Beyonce. Pressure much?
Huge pressure. Even Alexander the Great. His dad was Philip of Macedon, this incredible king. But Alexander knew he had to create his own legacy, not just live in his dad's shadow. And he did. Conquered most of the known world.
So what's the lesson here? How do you step out of someone else's shadow?
Recognize the challenge, and then focus on building your own identity. Be innovative. Bring something new. Don't be afraid to break with tradition. Make your own mark.
But what about when you're dealing with a group, an organization that seems like a fortress? Is there a way to crack those power structures?
That's Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. In any group, there are key people whose influence holds everything together. Take them out, the whole thing falls apart.
Like the queen bee or the alpha wolf?
Exactly. Greene talks about Scipio Africanus, the Roman general. He beat Hannibal by cutting off his supplies, disrupting his chain of command. Leadership is a point of vulnerability.
So if you can neutralize the leader, the rest becomes much easier to control.
It's a strategy you see in business negotiations, political campaigns, all sorts of things. But remember, power is most effective when it's used wisely and ethically.
Right. Always got to keep that in mind. So we talked about striking the shepherd, but what about winning over the sheep, so to speak?
That's where Law 43 comes in. Work on the hearts and minds of others. Real power is about earning respect and admiration, not just forcing people to do what you want.
Think of leaders like Nelson Mandela or Gandhi. They inspired millions through their values, their ability to connect with people.
Right. Greene uses the example of Zhuge Liang, a Chinese strategist. He was known for winning over his enemies through kindness, cunning, and generosity.
It's about understanding people, connecting with them emotionally, inspiring them to follow willingly, not out of fear.
Build real relationships, foster loyalty, create a shared purpose, and sometimes it's about understanding the power of reflection.
Reflection, like literally looking in a mirror.
In a way, yes. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. People are narcissistic. We like those who reflect back our own beliefs, desires.
Like looking in a mirror and seeing an idealized version of yourself.
Exactly. And Greene says you can use this to your advantage.
So become a chameleon, adapt to the person you're trying to influence.
He uses Alcibiades, that Athenian general again. He was a master of mirroring people's personalities. But remember, use this ethically.
Find common ground, build rapport, connect on a human level. It's not about being fake. It's about understanding that we all respond to feeling seen and understood.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about change, specifically within a group or organization. How do you bring about change without causing a revolt?
That's tricky. People hate change.
They do. Law 45. Preach the need for change, but never reform too much at once. Greene's saying too much change too fast, it's overwhelming and leads to pushback.
It's like trying to change someone's diet completely overnight. They'll probably rebel.
Right. Think about Henry VIII and the Catholic Church. Huge change, but it caused tons of upheaval. Change has to be gradual, strategic.
Understand the psychology of change, meet people where they are, gently guide them.
Exactly. And even when change is necessary, avoid drawing too much attention to yourself.
Which brings us to Law 46, right?
Yes. Never appear too perfect. Strive for excellence, but don't be too flawless. It's like that saying, the tallest tree catches the most wind. You stand out, you become a target.
Jealousy, resentment, sabotage.
Alcibiades, again, all his talent and success, but ultimately, his own pride and the envy he caused brought him down.
So stay humble, remember you're not perfect, and don't take your success for granted. Be relatable, even at the top.
Sometimes it's even best to downplay your strengths a bit, show a little vulnerability. It deflects the negativity.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's not just about achieving success, but maintaining it. Staying ahead of the game.
Leads us right into Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. One of the biggest dangers of success is overreaching.
It's like winning the lottery and then squandering it all. Know when to quit while you're ahead.
Greene talks about the Athenian expedition to Sicily. It was a disaster because they got overconfident, pushed too far. Victory can be fleeting. Know when to consolidate your gains and step back gracefully.
So there's a time for boldness, a time for caution, a time for expansion, and a time for consolidation. Know when you've reached the peak and have the humility to step back before you fall.
Exactly. Be strategic and remember that sometimes the biggest win is knowing when to stop.
This has been amazing. This deep dive into the 48 laws of power feels like a crash course in history, psychology, and strategy all rolled into one. And it's also relevant to today's world.
That's what's brilliant about Robert Greene's work. He's distilled these timeless principles into something we can all use to understand and navigate how people interact.
I'm ready for the last part of our journey. Bring on the final set of laws. Right, bring on the final chapter of our 48 laws of power deep dive. What other power moves does Greene have up his sleeve?
Let's start with Law 48. Assume formlessness. Greene uses the analogy of water, how it adapts, flows around obstacles. Over time, it can even erode the hardest rock.
So it's about being flexible, adaptable, changing your approach depending on the situation. Like a martial artist, using your opponent's force against them.
Exactly. He contrasts this with chess, rigid, fixed movements, a defined board. Formlessness embraces uncertainty. The only constant is change.
It's like that saying, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Let go of control, become a master of improvisation.
Greene uses examples from military history, like Mao Zedong's guerrilla tactics in the Chinese Revolution, or General Rommel in North Africa. Both adapted, exploited weaknesses.
Not a fixed plan, but a mindset of flexibility, responsiveness. Okay, I'm starting to feel like a power ninja here. What other strategies does he recommend?
Law 49. Concentrate your forces. In any competition, business, politics, even relationships, you got to focus your energy. Spreading yourself too thin, it dilutes your power.
Jack of all trades, master of none, right? Choose your battles, commit fully.
Caesar Borgia, he started with limited resources, but conquered a huge chunk of Italy by concentrating his forces. Quality over quantity.
He understood it was better to have a strong hold on a few areas than a weak grasp on many. It reminds me of choosing your battles, which you mentioned earlier.
Right. Law 50. Choose your battles, learn to fight and run away. Not every fight is worth winning. Sometimes retreat is the smarter move.
He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. Discretion is the better part of valor.
Like Fabius Maximus, the Roman general, he avoided direct confrontation with Hannibal, wore him down through attrition.
Hannibal's army was stronger. A direct fight would have been disastrous. He was patient, strategic, won by avoiding a head-on clash.
There's more than one way to win. Sometimes the best strategy is not fighting at all. Now, this next law is a personal favorite. Law 51. Always say less than necessary.
Ooh, the power of mystery. Keep them wanting more. Don't reveal your hand.
Exactly. Talking too much weakens your position. The more you reveal, the more vulnerable you are.
It's like those people who command attention without even speaking. Their presence, the mystery, draws you in.
Louis XIV, he cultivated that, the aloofness. Action spoke louder than words. The less he said, the more powerful he seemed.
Sometimes silence is golden. Hold back, create intrigue. All right, let's wrap this up with one last law. What's our final power move?
Law 52. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Might sound counterintuitive, but in a world of deception, genuine acts of honesty and generosity can really throw people off.
Catch them off guard with kindness, and you create an opening.
Alcibiades, as cunning as he was, he'd use grand gestures of generosity. But it's got to be selective, not about being a pushover, it's strategic.
Like a Trojan horse, right? Offering a gift with a hidden agenda. It's understanding the psychology of persuasion.
Exactly. Well, there you have it.
Well, wow, this deep dive into the 48 laws of power has been incredible. Intrigue, strategy, cautionary tales. It's like a secret decoder ring for understanding the world.
And remember, these laws aren't about manipulating people for your own selfish gain. They're about understanding the dynamics of power that are always at play in all areas of life.
So we're not just learning how to play the game, we're choosing what kind of player we want to be.
Well said.
As we wrap things up, think about these laws. Which ones stood out to you? How could you apply them in your life?
Power. It's not good or bad in itself. It's a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. The choice is yours.
Wield your power wisely, with intention. Remember, the greatest power isn't about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. That's all for this deep dive, folks. Until next time, stay curious, stay strategic, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.